Marcus Wheeler walked home from his maintenance job at the local high school, his toolbox heavy in his tired hands. The single father of a young boy, he could barely make ends meet, but they got by. Then he heard it, a soft cry coming from the trees at the edge of his small property. What he found there changed everything. Two little girls with identical faces chained to an old oak tree. They were cold, frightened, and alone. Without hesitation, Marcus freed them and brought them to his humble home, not knowing this act of kindness would turn his world upside down. Who could have done this to these innocent children? And why? Would someone want to hide them in this remote corner of the world? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Marcus Wheeler's alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m. His calloused fingers fumbled for the switch, silencing it before it could wake Tommy in the next room. The old farmhouse creaked as he swung his legs over the side of the bed, every joint in his body protesting another early start. In the dim light of his bedside lamp, Marcus's eyes fell on the worn leather wallet on his nightstand. Inside was the only photo he had left of Sarah, his late wife, holding their newborn son, her smile radiant despite her exhaustion. 5 years had passed since the drunk driver took her away, but some mornings the loss felt as fresh as yesterday. "We're doing okay, honey," he whispered to the photo, his daily ritual before facing another day. Tommy's growing so fast you wouldn't believe it. The boy was the spitting image of his mother, same golden brown hair, same determined chin. At 8 years old, he was already showing Sarah's spirit, facing the world with unwavering optimism. Despite their circumstances, Marcus moved through their morning routine with practiced efficiency. The house might be small and showing its age, but he kept it spotless. A maintenance worker's salary at Millbrook High didn't leave much room for luxuries, but they managed. The mortgage payments were steep, and the property taxes in this corner of Connecticut weren't forgiving, but it was worth it to give Tommy stability. In the kitchen, Marcus packed Tommy's lunch: peanut butter and honey on whole wheat, an apple, and the last chocolate chip cookie from the batch their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, had brought over. She looked after Tommy after school, refusing any payment beyond Marcus's help with her yard work on weekends. "Morning, Dad." Tommy's voice carried down the narrow hallway, followed by the thunder of small feet. "Hey, buddy." Marcus ruffled, his son's already messy hair. "Remember to put your science project in your backpack. Mrs. Peterson said you left it at her place yesterday." Tommy's face lit up. "It's going to win first place. I used real circuits just like you showed me." Marcus smiled, remembering the hours they'd spent together wiring the small display about renewable energy. Tommy had inherited his mother's brains and his father's practical skills, a combination that filled Marcus with both pride and worry. He wanted so much more for his son than a life of fixing other people's problems. "Eat up, champ. Bus comes in 20 minutes. As Tommy devoured his breakfast, Marcus thumbed through the stack of bills on the counter. Electric was due next week, and the water heater was making those sounds again. He'd have to pick up some extra hours at the high school, maybe see if any of the teachers needed odd jobs done at their homes. "Dad," Tommy's voice pulled him from his calculations. "Can we get pizza tonight?" It's Friday. Marcus's heart squeezed. Their Friday pizza tradition had started with Sarah, but lately he'd been skipping it to save money. Looking at his son's hopeful face, he couldn't say no. "Sure thing, buddy. If you ace that science presentation, we'll even get extra cheese." Tommy's whoop of joy echoed through the small kitchen, and for a moment Marcus forgot about the bills, the ache in his back, and the constant worry about making ends meet. The school bus's yellow bulk appeared at the end of their long driveway, right on schedule. Tommy grabbed his backpack and project, then threw his arms around Marcus's waist. In a quick hug, "Love you, Dad. Love you too, kiddo. Make me proud." Marcus watched until the bus disappeared around the bend, then gathered his tools for another day of fixing everything from leaky faucets to temperamental heating systems at Millbrook High. The school was showing its age, much like their house, but he knew every pipe, wire and creaky floorboard like the back of his hand. Principal Hayes nodded to him as he entered through the service entrance. "Morning, Wheeler. The gym's heating is acting up again." "I'll take care of it, sir." Marcus already had a good idea what the problem was. The ancient boiler system had more patches than original parts, but he kept it running through sheer determination and ingenuity. As he worked, students began filling the halls, their chatter and laughter echoing through the building. Some waved to him. He'd been here long enough that he'd watched them grow from wide-eyed freshmen to confident seniors. A few even came to him for advice about trade schools or mechanical problems with their first cars. By lunchtime, Marcus had fixed the heating, replaced 2 bathroom faucets, and helped the janitor with a stubborn lock on the supply closet. He ate his sandwich in the maintenance office, a cramped room in the basement that smelled perpetually of WD-40 and coffee. The local paper lay open on his desk, circled job listings for weekend work staring up at him accusingly. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Peterson. "Tommy forgot his house key again. I'll keep him until you're done. Made meatloaf if you want to join us." Marcus texted back his thanks, guilt mingling with gratitude. What would they do without her? The thought of Tommy having to go to some impersonal after-school program made his stomach turn. The afternoon passed in a blur of work orders and minor emergencies. As he gathered his tools at day's end, Marcus caught his reflection in the window of his office. At 36, he looked older than he should, the worry lines around his eyes deeper than they'd been even a year ago. But he stood straight, his shoulders square. Sarah had always said dignity didn't come from what you owned, but from how you carried yourself through life's storms. Little did Marcus know, as he headed home along the wooded path that bordered their property, that the biggest storm of his life was about to break, and it would begin with a sound that would haunt him forever, the muffled cry of children in distress, carried on the autumn wind. The cry came again, so faint Marcus thought he might have imagined it. He stopped, his toolbox hanging heavy at his side, and listened. The October wind rustled through the trees that bordered his property, carrying with it the scent of decay and approaching winter. There, another whimper, definitely human, definitely young. His first thought was of Tommy, but he knew his son was safe with Mrs. Peterson. Still, parental instinct kicked in, and he found himself moving toward the sound, pushing through the understory where his property met the abandoned Henderson land. The chains caught the last rays of sunlight first, a dull, metallic gleam against the dark bark of an ancient oak. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. 2 small figures huddled together at the base of the tree, their wrists and ankles bound with heavy chains, padlocked to thick roots. "Dear God," he whispered, dropping his toolbox with a clatter that made both girls flinch. They were identical. Same dark hair, same heart-shaped faces, same terror-filled brown eyes. Neither could have been more than 6 years old. Their expensive-looking dresses were torn and dirty, and angry red marks showed where the chains had rubbed their skin raw. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, kneeling a few feet away, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." One of the girls, he noticed a small mole near her left ear that distinguished her from her sister, pressed closer to the tree. The other stared at him with an intensity that broke his heart, as if trying to decide whether to hope or despair. Marcus reached for his toolbox with deliberate slowness. "I'm going to get these chains off you, all right? I fix things. That's my job. I'm good at it." He kept his voice steady, though his hands shook as he retrieved his bolt cutters. The chains were heavy-duty, industrial-grade. Someone had meant these children to stay put. The thought made his stomach turn. The bolt cutters were barely up to the task, but Marcus put all his strength into it, grunting with effort, as the metal finally gave way. As each chain fell free, he noticed more details that turned his blood cold. The girls were well groomed. Beneath the dirt, their nails neatly trimmed, their hair recently cut. These weren't runaways or neglected children. Someone had cared for them, right up until they chained them to this tree. "Can you tell me your names?" he asked gently, working on the last chain. They remained silent, but the one with the mole shook her head slightly, taught not to speak to strangers or threatened into silence. Either way, Marcus knew he had to get them somewhere safe before darkness fell completely. "My name is Marcus," he continued, keeping his voice calm. "I have a little boy named Tommy. He's 8, a bit older than you, I think. We live just over there." He pointed toward the lights of his house, visible through the trees. "I'd like to take you somewhere warm, get you something to eat. Would that be okay?" The girl without the mole touched her sister's hand, and some silent communication passed between them. Then, slowly, they both nodded. "Good girls. Can you walk?" Another nod. Their legs trembled as they stood, holding onto each other for support. Marcus gathered his toolbox and the cut chains, evidence, he thought grimly, and held out his free hand. After a long moment, the girl with the mole took it. Her sister gripped her other hand, and together they began the short walk to his house. Mrs. Peterson was on his porch with Tommy when they emerged from the woods. Her eyes widened at the sight of the twins, then narrowed with immediate understanding. "Tommy, honey, run inside and get some hot chocolate started." "But Mom says I'm not supposed to use the stove," Tommy began, then stopped as he caught sight of the girls. His mouth formed a perfect O of surprise. "Just the microwave packets, dear," Mrs. Peterson said firmly, already pulling out her phone. "Marcus, not the police. Not yet." Marcus surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. "Something's not right here. Let's get them warm first, figure out what we're dealing with." The elderly woman studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll stay. Help get them settled." Inside, the girls huddled together on his worn couch, their eyes darting around the small living room as if memorizing escape routes. Tommy brought them each a mug of hot chocolate, his usual chatter subdued to a gentle, "It's not too hot. I object." The girls accepted the mugs but didn't drink, watching Marcus and Mrs. Peterson warily. Marcus noted how they held the mugs with perfect posture, despite their obvious exhaustion. More evidence that wherever they came from, they'd been well trained in manners. "They need clean clothes," Mrs. Peterson said quietly, "and a doctor should look at those wrists and ankles. One thing at a time." Marcus knelt in front of the girls, making sure to give them plenty of space. "You're safe here. No one is going to hurt you or take you away unless you want them to. Can you understand that?" The one without the mole spoke for the first time, her voice barely a whisper. "Promise. I promise." The words came without hesitation, and Marcus knew he meant them with every fiber of his being. Whatever storm was coming, and he was sure one was, he would protect these children. Tommy, who had been hovering uncertainly nearby, suddenly darted to his room. He returned with his beloved stuffed dragon, held together with careful stitches where Marcus had repaired it countless times. "This is Stanley," he said, holding the dragon out to the twins. "He keeps bad dreams away. You can borrow him if you want." The simple kindness seemed to break through something. Both girls' eyes filled with tears, and the one with the mole reached for the dragon with trembling fingers. Her sister leaned forward and finally took a sip of hot chocolate. As Mrs. Peterson went to find clean clothes and first aid supplies, Marcus watched his son sit cross-legged on the floor near the couch, carefully not too close, and begin telling the girls about Stanley's adventures. The twins' postures gradually relaxed, though they maintained their death grip on each other's. "Hands!" Looking at the brutal chains on his kitchen counter, Marcus knew their peaceful Friday evening routine had just been shattered. Someone would come looking for these girls. Someone with enough money and influence to think they could chain children in the woods and get away with it. Well, they'd have to go through him first. Marcus Wheeler might be just a maintenance man, but he'd learned a thing or two about fixing broken things. And whatever was broken in these girls' lives, he intended to help fix it, no matter the cost. Officer Jenny Martinez had known Marcus Wheeler for years. Their kids were in the same class at Millbrook Elementary. So when she arrived at his house just after 9 p.m., her face already showed signs of concern rather than official detachment. "You should have called us immediately, Marcus," she said, her eyes fixed on the twins sleeping on the couch. Stanley the dragon clutched between them. Mrs. Peterson had managed to get them into clean pajamas Tommy had outgrown, and the angry marks on their wrists and ankles were now carefully bandaged. "I know," Marcus replied quietly, "but something felt wrong. Still does." He led her to the kitchen where the chains lay on the counter, their heavy links gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "This isn't some random crime, Jenny. Look at the quality of their clothes, the way they hold themselves. Somebody spent a lot of money on these girls before they decided to chain them up." Jenny's practiced fingers examined the chains, her frown deepening. "These are marine-grade stainless steel, expensive, and the locks," she turned one over, "high security. No standard bolt cutters should have been able to cut through these. Good thing mine aren't standard." Marcus managed a weak smile. "Needed industrial-grade ones after the school upgraded its security gates last year." The officer pulled out her phone and began taking pictures. "I'm calling this in. We need detectives. Crime scene unit." Her radio crackled to life. "Martinez, come in. Martinez here. Return to station immediately. Priority call." Jenny's eyebrows rose. "I'm at a crime scene with 2 possible kidnapping victims. Negative. Return to station." "That's an order." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Jenny stared at her radio as if it had personally betrayed her. "What just happened?" Marcus asked, though he had a sinking feeling he knew. "I don't—" Jenny's phone buzzed. She read the message, her face darkening. "My sergeant says the case has been reassigned. Federal jurisdiction." "That fast? How did they even know?" "They shouldn't have." Jenny's voice was clipped. "Nobody but you and me knows about this yet." She looked at the chains again, then at the sleeping girls. "Marcus, whatever this is, it's big, and I don't like it." A car door slammed outside. Through the kitchen window, Marcus saw 2 men in dark suits approaching his front door. Jenny's hand instinctively moved to her weapon. "Mr. Wheeler?" The knock was sharp, authoritative. "Federal agents. We need to speak with you." Marcus moved to block the hallway leading to the living room. "Jenny?" She shook her head slightly. "Never seen them before. And feds don't move this fast unless something's prearranged." The knocking came again, more insistent. Marcus could see the men's shadows through the porch light, tall and imposing. "Mr. Wheeler, open the door. This is a matter of national security." "National security?" Marcus whispered. "They're little girls." Jenny was already dialing her phone. "Captain, this is Martinez. I need verification on federal agents at—" She stopped, listening. Her face went pale. "Yes, sir. Understood." She hung up, looking sick. "Orders from the top. Full cooperation." Marcus felt the world tilting beneath his feet. How had this happened so fast? Who were these people? And most importantly, what did they want with 2 traumatized children? "The girls stay here," he said firmly. "Marcus!" "No, something's wrong here, Jenny. You know it. I know it. If these men are really federal agents, they can come back in the morning with proper documentation. Right now, those girls are sleeping for probably the first time in days. And I promised them they'd be safe." Jenny holstered her weapon but positioned herself beside Marcus, facing the door. "You're right." She raised her voice. "Officers Martinez and Wheeler are securing the scene. Return in the morning with proper documentation, and we'll cooperate fully." The shadows remained still for a long moment. Then one of the men spoke into what seemed to be a phone or radio, his voice too low to make out the words. Without another word to Marcus and Jenny, both men returned to their car and drove away. "Wheeler?" Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow at Jenny. She shrugged. "Seemed better than telling them you're the school maintenance man." "Thanks." He sagged against the wall, adrenaline leaving him shaky. "What now?" "Now, I stay here tonight. Officially, I'm taking preliminary statements from the victims." She pulled out her phone again. "And I'm calling in a few favors. Something about those men felt off. I want to know if they're really feds, and if they are, then we need to know why the federal government is interested in two little girls. Chained to a tree in Connecticut. She looked at the police report she'd started filling out. Any idea how old they are? Maybe 6? They haven't said much. Haven't told us their names either. Smart girls. Jenny's mouth set in a grim line. They've been taught not to trust strangers, but someone still chained them up like animals. A small sound made them both turn. One of the twins, the one with the mole, stood in the hallway. Stanley clutched to her chest. Bathroom, she whispered. Down the hall, sweetie. First door on the right. Marcus kept his voice gentle. Need help? She shook her head and scurried past them, closing the bathroom door carefully. They heard water running a few minutes later. Good manners, Jenny noted. Expensive clothes, well-groomed, and someone still hurt them. Yeah, Marcus looked at the chains again. Jenny, what have I gotten myself into? Don't know yet. She squeezed his shoulder. But you did the right thing. Sometimes that's all we can do. The bathroom door opened, and small feet padded back to the living room. Through the doorway, Marcus saw the girl curl up next to her sister again, both of them holding on to Stanley as if he really could keep the bad dreams away. Jenny was right. He'd done the right thing. But as he looked at the police report that would mysteriously vanish by morning, Marcus Wheeler knew his life had just become far more complicated than he'd ever imagined. Dawn broke over Marcus's property with an unsettling quiet. The morning paper lay at the end of his driveway, its front page dominated by a year-old photograph that made his coffee go cold in his hands. Billionaire Iris, still searching for missing twins. The girls in the photograph were younger, but unmistakable, matching pink dresses, identical smiles. Only one had a small mole near her left ear. The caption read, Catherine and Elizabeth Morgan, age 5. Last seen at their Connecticut estate. They're looking in the wrong places, a small voice said. Marcus, startled. One of the twins, Catherine, Elizabeth, stood in the doorway, her borrowed pajamas too short at the ankles. The people who took us, she continued, her voice barely a whisper. They read the papers too. They laugh about it. Before Marcus could respond, a car slowed in front of his house. Not the black sedan from last night. This one was a local news van, its satellite dish glinting in the morning sun. Inside, honey, he said quietly. Go sit with your sister. The girl disappeared silently like a ghost. Through his window, Marcus watched a reporter and cameraman setting up on the public road, just beyond his property line. They weren't looking. At his house. Not yet, but they were interviewing passing dog walkers, showing them something on a tablet. His phone buzzed. Jenny Martinez. Turn on Channel 7, she said without preamble. Someone talked. The local morning news was running a ticker at the bottom of the screen. Breaking missing Morgan twins, possibly sighted in Millbrook area. Above it, a helicopter shot showed the woods behind his property. How? Marcus demanded. Emergency. Services dispatch log, Jenny replied grimly. Someone leaked my call from last night. Marcus, you need to... A sharp knock at his back door cut her off. Mrs. Peterson stood there, face drawn with worry. They're at my house too, she said, as Marcus let her in, asking questions about strange children in the neighborhood. Tommy appeared at the top of the stairs, eyes wide. Dad, why are there cameras outside? Get the girls to the basement, Marcus told Mrs. Peterson. To Jenny, still on the phone, he added, We need help. Already on it. Don't talk to anyone. And Marcus, check your mail. He found it sitting innocently among the bills, a thick envelope from the Hartford Courier, postmarked 6 months ago. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping, Morgan twins disappearance, ransom demands continue. But it was the handwritten note paper-clipped to the article that made his blood run cold. You were meant to find them, keep them safe. Others are. Watching. Through the window he saw more news vans arriving. His phone started ringing with unfamiliar numbers, and somewhere in his basement, 2 terrified little girls were hiding, their secrets about to spark a storm he wasn't sure he could weather. But as Marcus watched a sleek black car park just out of sight down the road, its tinted windows concealing its occupants, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He'd meant what he promised those girls. No one would take them unless they wanted to go. Not reporters, not federal agents, not even a billionaire mother, not until he knew the whole truth. He folded the newspaper clipping carefully and slipped it into his wallet next to Sarah's photo. Then he went to make breakfast for 5, trying to ignore the growing crowd of reporters outside and the helicopter now circling overhead. Just another morning in what had become the strangest days of Marcus Wheeler's life. In the cool dimness of the basement, Tommy had created what he called a fort of safety, using old blankets, couch cushions, and every stuffed animal he owned. The twins sat inside it now, picking at the pancakes Marcus had managed to make, while the world went crazy outside. "Stanley wants to know your names," Tommy said, making the dragon dance in the air. "He says it's okay to tell us because we're friends now." The girl with the mole glanced at her sister, then touched her neck. For the first time, Marcus noticed thin gold chains disappearing beneath their borrowed pajama tops. "Can we?" the first twin started. "Show them?" her sister finished. Marcus nodded, trying to hide his surprise at their twin speak. The girls pulled out matching heart-shaped lockets, their surfaces scratched, but still gleaming with obvious quality. "I'm Catherine," said the one with the mole, opening her locket. Inside was a tiny photograph of a beautiful woman with the same dark hair as the twins. "But Mommy calls me Katie." "Elizabeth," said her sister softly. "Lizzie." Her locket held the same photo. "Those are very special," Mrs. Peterson said gently. "Did your mother give them to you?" Katie nodded. "On our 5th birthday, she said." She trailed off, looking at her sister. "She said as long as we wore them, she'd always find us," Lizzie finished. "But the bad people couldn't take them off because of the locks," Katie added. "Only Mommy has the key." Marcus examined the lockets more closely. Sure enough, there were tiny, intricate locks worked into the designs. He'd never seen anything like them. "Smart lady, your mom," he said carefully. "Want to tell us about the bad people?" The twins immediately drew closer together, their small faces closing off. Tommy, showing surprising intuition, made Stanley nuzzle each girl's hand. "Stanley says you don't have to talk about bad things," he declared. "He just wants to know your favorite colors, and if you like pizza." "Pink," Katie whispered after. "A moment." "Purple," Lizzie added. "Pizza," Tommy pressed hopefully. A ghost of a smile touched Katie's lips. "We never had pizza. Nanny said it wasn't proper." Tommy's jaw dropped. "Never. Dad, can we show them? Please." Marcus checked his phone. 27 missed calls, dozens of texts, and what looked like a growing crowd outside. But in the basement, looking at those 4 hopeful young faces, the chaos above seemed very far away. "We'll need toppings," he said. "Mrs. Peterson?" The elderly woman was already reaching for her phone. "I'll call Luigi's. They can use the back door." As she went upstairs, Marcus heard the twins whispering to each other. Finally, Katie spoke up. "The bad people said Mommy didn't want us anymore. That she sent us away because," she touched her locket, "because we weren't perfect enough." "But you saw the papers," Marcus said quietly. "She's been looking for you, never stopped." Lizzie's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't she find us then? We were so close." A loud bang from upstairs made everyone jump. Mrs. Peterson's voice floated down. "Just the screen door, dears. Wind's picking up." But Marcus noticed how the twins had instantly pressed themselves into the farthest corner of the fort, their faces pale with terror. Tommy, without hesitation, positioned himself in front of them, Stanley held like a shield. "Nobody's getting past me," he declared. "Dad fixes everything and I protect people. That's how our family works." "Family?" Katie's voice was so small, Marcus barely heard it. "Well, yeah." Tommy said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You're here, aren't you? And you have Stanley. That makes you family." Marcus watched in amazement as his son's simple declaration did what all their careful questions couldn't. The twins slowly relaxed, their death grip on each other's hands easing slightly. "The bad people took us from our ballet class," Lizzie said suddenly. "A woman pretended to be from the school. She said there was an emergency. She smelled like lemons," Katie added. "And her car had dark windows. She took us to a big house with no pictures on the walls." "How long ago?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The girls looked at each other again. "The leaves were green," Katie said. "And it was hot," Lizzie added. "Late summer then," Marcus calculated. "About 2 months ago. There were other houses too," Katie continued. "We moved a lot, always at night. They said if we tried to run away—" Lizzie touched her bandaged wrist. "But they got scared yesterday," Katie said. "They were yelling about something in the paper, about Mommy finding a clue. So they brought us to the woods," Lizzie finished. "Said they'd come back, but—" "They're not coming back," Marcus said firmly. "And they're not taking you anywhere, not ever again." A knock on the basement door made everyone freeze, but it was just Mrs. Peterson. "Pizza's on its way," she announced. "And Marcus, that nice Officer Martinez is upstairs. Says she has some interesting information about our visitors from last night." Marcus looked at the twins, their lockets glinting in the dim light. Whatever Jenny had found, he had a feeling it would only add to the growing mystery. But right now, watching Tommy explain the concept of pizza toppings to his newfound sisters, he decided the rest of the world could wait. Sometimes, he thought, healing had to come before answers, and these children had a lot of healing to do. The threatening letter arrived between the morning mail and the afternoon newspaper, a plain white envelope with no return address. Marcus found it tucked beneath his welcome mat while checking that the reporters still clustered at the end of his driveway hadn't ventured closer. "Forget what you saw. Walk away now." The words were cut from magazines, carefully pasted onto expensive cardstock. Below them lay a single photograph. Tommy at his bus stop that morning, unaware he was being watched. Marcus's hands shook as he closed the door. In the kitchen, he could hear the twins giggling at something Tommy had said. The sound of innocent childhood happiness made the threat in his hands feel even more sinister. "They're watching the house," Jenny Martinez said quietly. She'd appeared in his kitchen doorway, her uniform replaced by plain clothes. Not just the media. 3 different vehicles, rotating shifts, professional surveillance. "How do you know?" She gave him a tight smile. "Because I've been watching them watch you." She nodded at the letter in his hands. "New development?" Marcus wordlessly handed it over. Jenny's face darkened as she read it, her finger tracing the edges of Tommy's photo. "This is high-end paper," she said finally. "Not something you'd find at an office supply store. And these magazine clippings," she squinted at them. "They're from The Economist and Financial Times. Our kidnappers have expensive taste." "What do I do?" Marcus's voice was hoarse. "They're threatening my son." "You do nothing," Jenny said firmly, "because that's exactly what they expect. A single father, scared for his kid, backing down." She pulled out her phone and fired off. A quick text. "But they don't know about your backup." As if on cue, a truck pulled into Marcus's driveway. Bill Henderson, head of maintenance at Millbrook High, stepped out, followed by 3 other maintenance workers Marcus knew well. "Heard you might need some security upgrades," Bill called out cheerfully, loud enough for the reporters to hear. "Team's all here, boss." More vehicles arrived, parents from Tommy's school, teachers Marcus had helped over the years, even Principal Hayes. Each carried tools or supplies, chatting loudly about home improvements and community projects. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, stunned. "Small-town solidarity," Jenny said with satisfaction. "Mrs. Peterson's been making calls. Everyone knows you'd do the same for them." Inside, the twins had crept to the window, watching wide-eyed as people transformed Marcus's front yard into what looked like a community work project. Tommy was explaining who everyone was, his chest puffed out with pride. That's Mrs. Rodriguez. She brings the best cookies to our bake sales. And that's Mr. Chen. He taught me how to play chess. Oh, and that's... They're building a wall, Lizzie whispered, watching Bill's team unload lumber. No, sweetie. Mrs. Peterson joined them at the window. They're building a shield. Sometimes. That's what community does. It stands between good people and bad intentions. By sunset, Marcus's house had new security cameras, donated by the local hardware store, reinforced locks installed by Bill's team, and motion sensor lights, courtesy of the electrical union where Jenny's husband worked. More importantly, it was now clearly under the protection of an entire town. Let them try something now, Bill said grimly, handing Marcus the security system's codes. We've got people watching in shifts. Anything moves out there, we'll know. But it was what Marcus found in his mailbox that evening that truly drove home the community's message. Dozens of letters, each containing a single photograph of their own children with the same message. They're all our kids now. We stand together. The threatening letter lay forgotten on his kitchen counter as Marcus watched Tommy show the twins how to make s'mores in the microwave, supervised by Mrs. Peterson. Outside, he could see his neighbors casually patrolling the street, walking, dogs or jogging in pairs. The surveillance cars Jenny had spotted were gone, perhaps realizing their presence had been noticed. They'll try something else, Jenny warned, accepting a slightly scorched s'more from an enthusiastic Tommy. People with this kind of money and influence don't give up easily. Let them try, Marcus said quietly, watching Katie carefully wipe chocolate from her sister's chin. Some things are worth fighting for. Later that night, after the twins had fallen asleep, in a proper bedroom now, thanks to the community's donations, Marcus found Tommy sitting on the back porch, Stanley in his lap. Dad? His son's voice was serious. Are the bad people going to try to take Katie and Lizzie away? Marcus sat down beside him, choosing his words carefully. Some people might try, but they'll have to get through a lot of good people first. Tommy nodded solemnly. Stanley says he'll bite them if they try. He paused. Dad, can we keep them? Not like pets or anything, but like sisters. It's complicated, buddy. They have a mom who's been looking for them. I know, but maybe their mom would let us be part of their family too, because they need us, I can tell. Marcus pulled his son close, marveling at the wisdom that sometimes came from children. We'll figure it out, okay? For now, let's just focus on keeping them safe. Inside, Marcus heard one of the twins cry out in her sleep. Before he could move, Tommy was already up, Stanley clutched in his hand. They need their dragon, he said seriously, heading inside. Watching his son disappear into the house, Marcus touched the threatening letter in his pocket. Tomorrow, he'd worry about surveillance and kidnappers and all the complications that came with harboring two missing heiresses. But tonight, listening to Tommy's voice drift down the hallway as he told the twins another story about Stanley's adventures, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. Some threats couldn't be answered with fear. Sometimes the only response to darkness was to build something stronger, a community, a family, a home. And that's exactly what was happening, one small gesture at a time. The security footage played on Bill Henderson's laptop in stark black and white. 3 figures moved across Marcus's backyard at 2 a.m., their movements precise and professional. They tested windows, checked sightlines, photographed entry points. One stood guard, while another picked the lock on the garden shed, methodically documenting its contents. They're planning something, Bill said quietly. This is professional reconnaissance. Marcus watched the figures retreat into the darkness, his throat tight. How did they get past the motion sensors? They didn't. Bill pointed to a small indicator light in the corner of the screen. Sensors caught them. But they wanted us to see this. It's a message. The timestamp showed that this had happened while everyone slept, while Tommy and the twins dreamed under Stanley's protection, while Marcus thought they were finally safe. His phone buzzed. Principal Hayes. The third call this morning. He'd been avoiding this conversation, but now, Marcus. Hayes's voice was strained. The Board of Education is meeting this afternoon. They're concerned about the situation. The situation? Having someone so prominently involved in a potential kidnapping case. It's bringing unwanted attention to the school. Parents are calling. The media's been asking questions about your background, your access to children. I've worked there for 10 years, Marcus interrupted, his voice hollow. I know. I fought for you, Marcus. But they're putting me in an impossible position. Either you take a leave of absence or I'm fired. The silence was answer enough. When he hung up, Bill was watching him with understanding. They got to the board somehow. Money talks. Money screams, Marcus corrected bitterly. And now I have 3 kids to feed with no job. 4 kids, came a small voice from the doorway. Katie stood there in her borrowed pajamas, Stanley clutched to her chest. Stanley makes 4, she explained. He needs breakfast too. Despite everything, Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips. Does he now? Katie nodded solemnly. Lizzie's helping Tommy make pancakes. They sent me to get you because... She broke off, her eyes widening at the security footage still playing on the laptop. Before Marcus could close it, she'd moved closer, her small face intent. That's him, she whispered. The man with the limp. He was at the last house. Bill quickly paused the footage, zooming in. Sure enough, one of the figures moved with a slight asymmetry. Katie, Marcus said gently, can you tell us anything about this man? She twisted Stanley's tail in her fingers. He was in charge. The others called him Sir, and he was the one who... She touched her wrist where the chain marks were still healing. Marcus fought down a wave of rage. Did he ever say his name? Katie shook her head. But he had. A ring, a big one with a bird on it. Lizzie said it was a falcon. Bill was already typing notes. Anything else you remember, sweetheart? He smelled like fancy soap. Like at the hotels Mommy took us to. And, she frowned, concentrating, he talked funny sometimes. Like on TV shows about rich people. British, Bill suggested. No, Katie's face lit up. French, like our old tutor, Madame Claire. The sound of small feet on the stairs interrupted them. Tommy's voice floated down. Katie, the pancakes are getting cold. Go on, Marcus said, forcing cheerfulness into his voice. Can't let Stanley's breakfast get cold. When she'd gone, Bill turned to him. A French connection. High-end taste. Professional team. This isn't some random kidnapping, Marcus. These people have resources. And I just lost my job. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. They're trying to squeeze me. Make me desperate enough to give up the girls. Not going to work. Bill closed his laptop firmly. The union's already talking about a fundraiser. Jenny's got half the force watching your house off duty. And Mrs. Peterson's practically moved in. I can't ask people to... You're not asking, we're offering. That's what community means. Bill stood, gathering his equipment. Besides, you've got something they don't. What's that? Those girls trust you, really trust you. You saw how Katie came straight to you with that information about the limping man. That's not something you can buy with all the money in the world. Upstairs, laughter erupted from the kitchen, followed by Tommy's voice making exaggerated dragon roars. For a moment it sounded like any normal family breakfast. But Marcus couldn't forget the security footage, the professional precision of those figures testing his defenses. They were sending a message. We can get in any time we want. Well, he had a message for them too. They might have cost him his job, might be trying to isolate him, but they'd overlooked something important. In trying to break him, they'd only succeeded in making his makeshift family stronger. He followed the sound of laughter upstairs, where he found a kitchen covered in flour, 4 children, counting Stanley, sticky with syrup, and Mrs. Peterson calmly documenting it all on her phone for evidence of happiness, as she put it. Looking at their bright faces, Marcus made a silent promise. Let them come with their money and their threats. Some things couldn't be bought or broken, like the trust in Katie's eyes when she saw him, the protective way Tommy handled Stanley's pancake-sharing duties, the way Lizzie had finally started humming to herself when she felt safe. He'd find a way to make things work, And when the people behind this finally showed themselves, they'd learn what Bill already knew. Trust and love were weapons too, and Marcus Wheeler had them in abundance. The old family album lay between them on Mrs. Peterson's kitchen table, its leather cover cracked with age. Jenny had found it in the local library's archives, a piece of forgotten history that suddenly seemed very relevant. Claire Morgan, Jenny said, tapping a yellowed photograph. The twins' grandmother, married into the Morgan shipping empire in 1985, then mysteriously died in a boating accident 6 months later. Marcus studied the photograph. A young woman smiled at the camera, her dark hair and heart-shaped face eerily similar to the twins. Behind her stood a massive mansion, the same one featured in recent news coverage about the missing girls. Their mother, Victoria, was only 3 when Claire died, Jenny continued, turning pages. Grew up isolated in that mansion with her father, Alexander Morgan. He never remarried, dedicated himself to expanding the family business instead. The next photo showed a teenage Victoria at what appeared to be a debutante ball. She had her mother's beauty but none of her warmth. Her smile was practiced, her posture rigid. Then this happened, Jenny said, pulling out a newspaper clipping tucked between the pages. The headline read, "Morgan Heiress defies father, pursues medical career." She wanted to be a doctor, Marcus asked, surprised. Not just any doctor. She specialized in rare genetic disorders, was making a name for herself in research. When Alexander died 10 years ago, she inherited everything, the mansion, the business, the fortune, but she kept working at the hospital until what? Jenny hesitated. Until she met the twins' father. That's where things get interesting. She pulled out her notebook. James Chen, brilliant geneticist. They worked together on some classified research project, got married in secret, had the twins. Then he disappeared 3 years ago. No trace. A small gasp made them both turn. Lizzie stood in the doorway, her face pale. Daddy didn't disappear, she said quietly. The bad people took him too. Katie appeared beside her sister, their hands automatically finding each other. We heard Mommy crying on the phone. She said they were trying to make Daddy do bad things with the special medicine, but he wouldn't. Marcus exchanged looks with Jenny. What special medicine, sweetheart? The one that was supposed to help sick people, Katie said, but the bad people wanted to use it for something else. Daddy said no, Lizzie added, so they took him away, and then they started watching us at school, and then they took you. And two, Marcus finished gently. The twins nodded in unison. They said if Mommy didn't give them what they wanted, Katie touched her locket. They'd hurt us, Lizzie whispered. Jenny was already making notes. Do you remember anything about this special medicine? What it was for? The girls looked at each other, having one of their silent conversations. Finally, Katie spoke. It had something to do with why we're the same. Being twins, Marcus asked. No, Lizzie shook her head. Being perfect copies. That's what the doctors always said when they tested us. We're exact copies, down to every last... She frowned, trying to remember the word. Molecule, Katie supplied. They said we weren't supposed to be possible. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. He looked at the family album again, at Claire Morgan's familiar face, at Victoria's cold smile, at the empire built on secrets. The research project, he said to Jenny. What was it called? She consulted her notes. Project Mirror. But all records of it were sealed after James Chen disappeared. Mirrors, Katie said suddenly. The bad house had lots of mirrors. They made us stand in front of them for hours, measuring things. And taking blood, Lizzie added, rubbing her arm unconsciously. Marcus felt sick. They hadn't just kidnapped 2 little girls. They'd kidnapped 2 living experiments. But what were they trying to prove? And how did it connect to their father's disappearance? The sound of Tommy's school bus pulling up outside interrupted his thoughts. The twins immediately brightened. Can we help make snacks? Katie asked. We learned how to use the toaster all by ourselves. With supervision, Mrs. Peterson called from the living room right on cue. Marcus watched them hurry to the kitchen, their dark heads bent together, moving in perfect synchronization. Perfect copies, down to the molecular level. No wonder someone was willing to go to such lengths to get them back. He turned back to the family album, to Claire Morgan's warm smile, so like her granddaughter's. "There's more to this story," he said quietly. Jenny nodded, gathering her notes. "I'll keep digging, but Marcus—" She hesitated. "If these girls are what I think they are, if this research is what it seems, you're not just up against kidnappers. You're up against people who would do anything to keep certain secrets buried." "Like making a young mother disappear in a boating accident?" Marcus asked, looking at Claire's photograph again. "Exactly like that." Jenny stood. "Be careful. And maybe start teaching those girls more than just how to use a toaster. They might need survival skills sooner than we think." After she left, Marcus stayed at the table, studying the album. 3 generations of Morgan women, all with the same heart-shaped face, all tangled in a web of secrets he was only beginning to understand. From the kitchen came the sound of children's laughter, as Tommy apparently did something amusing with Stanley. Normal, innocent sounds that made the weight of what he'd learned even heavier. Those girls deserved a chance at that normalcy, and Marcus intended to give it to them, no matter what secrets from their past came knocking at his door. The corporate document arrived in a plain brown envelope on Mrs. Peterson's doorstep. No return address, no note, just a single folder stamped with the Morgan Biotech logo and the words, "Project Mirror, Phase 2. Jenny spread the contents. Across Mrs. Peterson's dining room table, her face growing grimmer with each page. "This is bigger than we thought," she said finally. "Much bigger." Marcus picked up what looked like a research proposal. The language was technical, full of terms he didn't understand, but certain phrases jumped out. Genetic replication, perfect cellular duplication, human trials. "They weren't trying to have twins," Jenny said quietly. "They were trying to create them, perfect copies, and they succeeded. The girls. Look at the dates." Jenny pointed to a timeline. Victoria Morgan and James Chen's research was groundbreaking. They found a way to create exact genetic duplicates, not clones, something new, something that had never been done before. But why? Think about it. Perfect genetic copies, guaranteed to be compatible for organ transplants. No rejection issues, no waiting lists. It could revolutionize medicine. She paused. Or make someone very, very rich. "The father," Marcus said, understanding dawning. "He wanted to help people, but someone else wanted to monetize it, create designer duplicates for the highest bidder." Jenny shuffled through more papers. "There's a whole marketing plan here. Guaranteed genetic replacements for aging executives. Perfect donor matches for sale." Marcus felt sick. "They're children." "They're prototypes," Jenny corrected grimly. "The first successful human duplicates, proof that it works. And look who was behind the commercialization plan." She held up a document bearing a familiar signature. Alexander Morgan, the twins' grandfather. The date was just weeks before his death. "He wanted to turn his own granddaughters into products," Marcus whispered. "And when he died, everything went to Victoria, including control of the research." Jenny leaned back. She must have shut it down, tried to protect the girls, give them a normal life. So they took her husband, threatened her children. Marcus's hands clenched. To force her to restart the program. But she still wouldn't give in. Jenny gathered the papers carefully. So they took the girls themselves, not for ransom, for research, to reverse engineer the process that created them. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The endless medical tests the twins had mentioned, the mirrors, the measurements, they weren't just holding the girls captive, they were studying them. "That's why they ran," he said suddenly. "When they saw the newspaper about Victoria finding a clue, they weren't afraid of being caught. They were afraid she'd found proof of what they were doing. And now we have that proof. Jenny patted the folder. Enough to expose everything. If we can prove it's real. Oh, it's real. Jenny smiled grimly. Because I recognize the paper. In type, same as your threatening letter. Whoever sent this is on the inside. A thought struck Marcus. The limping man. Katie said he was in charge. Could he be a former Morgan biotech executive? Jenny was already pulling up something on her phone. I think I found him. Jean-Paul Dubois, former head of research development, lost his board position when Victoria took control and shut down Project Mirror. And look, she showed Marcus, a photo of a distinguished older man wearing a ring with a distinctive falcon design, the same ring Katie had described. We've got them, Jenny said softly. Now we just need to... A scream from upstairs cut her off. Mrs. Peterson's voice sharp with fear. Marcus! He was moving before the echo faded, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The scene in the bedroom stopped him cold. The twins stood at the window, faces pressed to the glass. Outside, across the street, a familiar figure stood in plain view. Even at this distance, the falcon ring was clearly visible as the man raised his hand in a mocking wave. But it was what he held in his other hand that made Marcus's blood run cold. A stuffed dragon, identical to Stanley, but brand new. A message, clear as day. We can replace anything. Anyone. That's what we do. Tommy appeared beside Marcus, the real Stanley clutched protectively to his chest. Looking at the 4 children, the twins with their perfect symmetry, his son with his mother's determined chin, and the worn, stuffed dragon that represented everything real and irreplaceable in their world, Marcus made his decision. Jenny, he called downstairs, never taking his eyes off the man across the street. Get Victoria Morgan on the phone. It's time she knew who really killed her father. Because that's what this evidence suggested, even if it wasn't spelled out. Alexander Morgan hadn't died of natural causes. He'd been removed by the very people who now wanted to steal his research, his legacy, and his granddaughter's. The game was changing. And Marcus Wheeler, unemployed maintenance man and accidental guardian of the world's first perfect human duplicates, was about to become the biggest threat to a billion-dollar conspiracy. Let them bring their money, their threats, their replacement. Dragons. Some things couldn't be duplicated, no matter how perfect the science. Love, trust, family, and Marcus had all 3. The letter arrived by courier an hour after Jenny made the call. Victoria Morgan's handwriting was elegant but rushed, the paper bearing traces of dried tears. My dearest Katie and Lizzie, for 2 months I've imagined writing this letter. Never. Knowing if you'd be safe enough to read it, every day without you has been agony. Every night I've touched your empty beds and remembered the last time I kissed you goodnight. How I didn't know it would be the last time. But now I know you're safe, protected by a man who chose to help my children without knowing who they were or what storm would follow. Mr. Wheeler, I can never repay that kindness. But I can give you what you need most. The truth. My father didn't just die. He was murdered by the same people who took your father, who took you. I found proof in his personal files, but before I could act, they threatened James. They said they would unmake what we had made. Our beautiful girls, our miracle children. James refused to help them weaponize our research. He knew what they wanted, not just medical breakthroughs, but perfect duplicates of world leaders, of billionaires, of anyone willing to pay enough. They took him, but he never broke, never gave them what they needed. So they took you instead, my perfect daughters. They thought they could study you, reverse engineer the process that created you. They didn't understand that you're not just experiments. You're children, my children, and I'm coming for you, Mr. Wheeler. By the time you read this, I'll be in position. My security team has surrounded the neighborhood. Agent Martinez isn't just a local police officer. She's been my eyes and ears, protecting you while we gathered evidence. The man with the falcon ring. We're tracking him now. Keep my daughters safe for just a little longer. Dawn will bring changes none of them are prepared for. With all my love and gratitude, Mom, P.S. Katie, Lizzie. Daddy sends his love. We found him 3 days ago, hidden in a private hospital in Switzerland. He's weak, but recovering. He never stopped fighting to get back to us. Neither did I. Marcus lowered the letter, his hands shaking. Through Mrs. Peterson's front window, he noticed subtle movements in the darkness. Professional security teams, taking positions. The twins sat close together on the couch, their matching lockets glinting in the lamplight. They'd been silent since he started reading, but their eyes were bright with tears and hope. "Daddy's alive," Katie whispered. "And Mommy's coming," Lizzie added. Tommy, who had been listening intently while hugging Stanley, spoke up. "See? I told you my dad fixes everything. He kept you safe until your mom could come." Marcus looked at Jenny. "No, Agent Martinez." She smiled apologetically. "Victoria recruited me 6 months ago when she first found evidence of the conspiracy. We needed someone on the inside, someone they wouldn't suspect. A small-town cop with a personal connection to you was perfect. All this time, we were building a case, but we needed proof of what they were doing with the girls. The surveillance photos, the threatening letter, the corporate documents, it all helps. And now," she checked her phone, "now we have them. Every member of the shadow board that ordered Alexander Morgan's death, that took James Chen, that kidnapped the girls. Dawn raid, multiple locations. The man with the ring? Already in custody. Victoria's team picked him up 10 minutes ago. When he left your street, he never saw them coming." Marcus felt the tension of the past days finally start to ease. But then he looked at the twins, at how tightly they held each other's hands, and knew there was one more storm to weather. "Girls," he said gently, "your mom is coming to take you home." Their faces showed a complex mix of joy and fear. Finally, Katie spoke. "But what about Stanley and Tommy?" Lizzie added. "And you?" They finished together. Before Marcus could answer, Jenny's phone buzzed. She read the message and smiled. "Victoria says, and I quote, 'Ask Mr. Wheeler and his son if they'd like to see what a proper thank you looks like from a grateful billionaire mother.'" Tommy's eyes went wide. "Does that mean—" "That means," Marcus said, finally understanding, "that maybe family isn't just about who you're born to. Sometimes it's about who you choose to trust, who you choose to love." The twins smiled through their tears, and for the first time since he'd found them chained to that tree, Marcus saw their future clearly. It wouldn't be easy. There would be trials and testimony, therapy and tears. But there would also be healing and hope, and a family bigger and stranger and more wonderful than any of them had imagined. Dawn was coming, and with it, justice, reunion, and the beginning of something new. The hand-drawn map spread across Mrs. Peterson's coffee table looked like something from a child's treasure hunt. But the simple lines and X's, drawn in Katie's careful handwriting with Lizzie adding details, represented something far more valuable than buried gold. "This is where they kept us first," Katie said, pointing to a house sketched in purple crayon. "The one with all the mirrors. And here's the doctor's office," Lizzie added, tapping a blue square, "where they took our blood." Jenny, now openly coordinating with Victoria's security team, photographed the map while a stern-faced woman in tactical gear made notes on a tablet. "The girls' memories match our surveillance," the woman said. 5 properties total, all owned by shell companies linked to former Morgan biotech executives. Victoria's teams are in position at each location. Marcus studied the map, noting how the twins had drawn bars on some windows, locks on certain doors. Even in crayon, the details were chilling. "What about the research?" he asked. "The original Project Mirror files?" According to the girls, they saw people scanning lots of papers at the last house. Jenny pointed to a red X on the map, right before they panicked and moved the twins to your woods. The tactical woman, who'd introduced herself only as Commander Chen, nodded grimly. Victoria's source confirms they were digitizing everything, preparing to destroy the originals and move the data overseas. But we got there first, Jenny added with satisfaction. Raid teams are ready at every site, just waiting for... A soft knock at the front door made everyone freeze. Commander Chen's hand moved to her concealed weapon, but Mrs. Peterson was already opening the door. A tall woman in elegant clothing stood on the porch, her heart-shaped face instantly familiar from the family album. But where the photos had shown Victoria Morgan as cold and distant, the woman who stepped into the room radiated barely contained emotion. "Mommy!" The twins' cry was simultaneous, but they didn't run to her. Instead, they gripped each other's hands tighter, pressing, close to where Tommy sat with Stanley. Victoria Morgan stopped, her composed expression cracking slightly. She knelt, putting herself at the children's level. "Katie, Lizzie," she said softly, "I'm so sorry it took me so long to find you, to make it safe enough to come." The twins exchanged one of their silent looks. Then Katie asked, "Is Daddy really okay?" "He is." Victoria's smile was watery. "He wanted to come, but he's still weak. He's waiting for us at home, the new home, not the old mansion. Somewhere safe, where we can all be together." "All of us?" Lizzie glanced at Tommy, then Marcus. Victoria stood facing Marcus directly. "Mr. Wheeler, you protected my children when I couldn't, gave them safety, stability, love, things I failed to provide." "You didn't fail," Marcus said quietly. "You were fighting for them the whole time." "Perhaps, but they need more than just safety now. They need..." She looked at Tommy, still holding Stanley protectively. "They need family. All the family they can get." Commander Chen cleared her throat. "Ma'am, the teams are in position. We have a short window before dawn when we shut down the people who hurt my husband, threatened my children, and tried to turn my father's company into a factory for manufacturing human duplicates." Victoria's voice turned steel hard. "Yes, I know, but first..." She turned back to Marcus. "Would you and Tommy like to see your new house? It's just down the street from where the girls and James will be staying." Tommy's eyes went huge. "We get to stay together, if that's what you want," Victoria said. "All of you." The twins finally moved, not to their mother, but to hold Tommy's hands. "Please," they asked Marcus in unison. Looking at this strange gathering, a billionaire mother, a tactical team commander, a police detective, an elderly neighbor. 3 children and 1 well-loved dragon, Marcus felt something settle in his chest. "Yes," he said simply, "we'd like that very much." Victoria nodded, then turned back to Commander Chen. "Proceed with the operation. But remember, we want them alive. They have a lot of questions to answer about my father's death. And James's kidnapping," Jenny added, "and what they did to my daughters." Victoria's face hardened. "I want them to have to explain in court exactly why they thought they could treat children like lab specimens." Commander Chen touched her earpiece. "Teams are go. Operation Miracrack commencing in 10 minutes. Outside, Marcus could hear vehicles moving into position. But inside this room, watching the twins finally step forward to hug their mother while keeping firm hold of Tommy's hands, he knew the real victory had already been won. Family, he was learning, could be as complicated as any scientific breakthrough. But it could also be as simple as children sharing a stuffed dragon, as natural as hands, clasped in trust, as powerful as love that refused to be duplicated or destroyed. The trust document lay unopened on the kitchen table, while Victoria Morgan paced, her designer heels clicking against Mrs. Peterson's linoleum floor. Through the window, dawn was still just a promise on the horizon. "Before we move," she said, "you need to understand what you're becoming part of." She touched the legal papers. "This isn't just about protection, it's about legacy." Marcus looked at the document's heading, Morgan Family Trust Amendment and Integration. Below it, his name and Tommy's were professionally printed, alongside Catherine and Elizabeth Morgan. "The people we're moving against," Victoria continued, "they're not just criminals. They're true believers. They think what James and I created, what led to the girls, is the next step in human evolution, controlled reproduction of perfect specimens. But that's not what you were trying to do, Marcus said quietly. No, Victoria smiled sadly. We were trying to save children. The genetic replication process, it was meant for creating compatible organ donors for critically ill kids. Give dying children a chance without having to wait for matches. She touched her locket, identical to the ones the twins wore. Like my mother never had. Jenny looked up sharply from her tablet. Claire Morgan's boating accident wasn't an accident. She needed a heart transplant. No compatible donors could be found in time. Victoria's voice was tight with old pain. My father became obsessed with preventing similar tragedies, funded our research, but somewhere along the way, he saw the commercial possibilities, forgot the original purpose. And the girls, Marcus asked, they were a miracle, a proof of concept that worked too well. We thought we could create limited tissue replication. Instead, we achieved something unprecedented, perfect human duplication down to the quantum level. She looked toward the living room where the twins slept, curled around Stanley with Tommy keeping watch. They're identical in ways that shouldn't be possible, share connections that science can't explain. The twins speak, Marcus said, the way they always know what the other is thinking. Quantum entanglement at a cellular level. They're literally connected in ways we barely understand. Victoria's hands clenched. When my father realized what we'd achieved, he wanted to monetize it immediately, create a market for designer duplicates. When I refused, they killed him, Jenny finished, made it look like natural causes, and took James, tried to force him to recreate the process. Victoria touched the trust document. That's why this matters. The girls aren't just my daughters. They're living proof that this technology exists. There will always be people trying to find them, study them, duplicate them, unless they have protection. Marcus understood. A family trust makes you their legal guardians too, gives you resources, security, the power to protect them if anything happens to me or James. She met his eyes. I'm not just offering you a house, Mr. Wheeler. I'm asking you to become part of a lifelong commitment to keeping my children safe. Commander Chen appeared in the doorway. Ma'am, teams report all targets are in position, including Dubois. The man with the ring, Marcus said. Victoria nodded. My father's former head of research, the one who... She stopped, collecting herself. We have evidence linking him directly to James's kidnapping and my father's murder, but he's not working alone. There's a whole shadow board of former executives involved, which is why we're hitting all locations simultaneously, Jenny added. Don't want any of them slipping away. There's something else. Victoria opened her locket, removing what looked like a tiny memory card. Everything James and I discovered about human duplication, all the research they've been trying to steal, it's been here the whole time. Hidden in plain sight, split between 3 identical lockets. Marcus understood suddenly. That's why they couldn't take the lockets from the girls. And why they needed both twins. Victoria's smile was fierce. The data is encrypted. Requires all 3 pieces to be complete. They thought if they had the girls long enough, studied them thoroughly enough, they could recreate our work. They never realized the key was literally around their necks, Jenny finished. Brilliant. Commander Chen touched her earpiece again. 2-minute warning, ma'am. Are we proceeding? Victoria looked at Marcus. That depends. Are you ready to officially become part of this family? With everything that means? Marcus thought about his life just days ago. Fixing leaky faucets, stretching paychecks, trying to give Tommy the best life he could. Now he was being offered wealth, security, and a chance to protect children who needed him. But looking at Victoria's face, so like her daughter's, marked by the same determination he saw in them, he knew this wasn't really about money or security. It was about choosing to stand against people who would treat children like products, about defending the miracle of family in all its strange and wonderful forms. He picked up the pen beside the trust document. Where do I sign? The recording. Device hidden in Commander Chen's tactical vest picked up Jean-Paul Dubois' voice with perfect clarity. The Morgan brats must be found. Without them, the project dies. Victoria's hand tightened on the headphones as they sat in the mobile command. Center Park, 2 blocks from Mrs. Peterson's house. The mansion where Dubois was holding his emergency board meeting loomed on the surveillance screens, its windows glowing in the pre-dawn darkness. 7 targets confirmed inside, Commander Chen reported, including all 5 Shadow Board members. Security teams are in position. Marcus watched the infrared images showing heat signatures moving inside the mansion. After signing the trust documents, he'd insisted on being here. These people had threatened Tommy, had hurt the twins. He needed to see this through. There. Reviewing the Project Mirror files now, the surveillance agent reported through the comms. Through the hidden camera, they could see Dubois gesturing at displays showing medical data. The twins' medical data. As you can see, Dubois was saying, the girl's cellular structure is unique. The quantum entanglement effect cannot be replicated. Without understanding exactly how Morgan and Chen achieved it, we need... The mansion's lights went out. Alpha Team, go! Commander Chen ordered. On the screens, chaos erupted. Tactical teams breached every entrance simultaneously. Through the comms came the sound of breaking glass, shouts of "Federal agents!" and the thunder of boots on marble floors. "Target is moving!" someone called. West Wing headed for the panic room. Victoria leaned forward. He's going for the secondary lab, the one where they held James. Bravo team, cut him off, Commander Chen ordered. Do not let him reach the basement. But Dubois had clearly planned for this. Gas suddenly filled the West Wing corridors. Through the infrared, they watched security guards in gas masks emerge from hidden panels. Private military contractors, Jenny said grimly. Just like we expected. The fighting was intense but brief. Victoria's teams had the advantage of surprise and superior numbers. Within minutes, most of the Shadow Board members were in custody, but Dubois had slipped away. Basement access confirmed, came the report. He's destroying evidence. Victoria stood. That lab contains proof of what they did to James, to my father. Ma'am, you can't, Commander Chen began. But Victoria was already moving, Jenny right behind her. Marcus found himself following, driven by an instinct he couldn't explain. They descended into the basement, using the security team's cleared path. The lab, when they reached it, was state-of-the-art and sterile, and in the center Dubois stood calmly feeding documents into an industrial shredder. It's over, Jean-Paul, Victoria said. He turned, his falcon ring glinting. Victoria, I wondered when you'd find us. His accent was precise, aristocratic. Though I must admit, I expected you sooner. Your father would be disappointed in how long it took you to solve his murder. My father would be disgusted by what you've done to his legacy. Dubois smiled thinly. His legacy? He understood what you never did, the true potential of your discovery, perfect human duplication. Imagine the possibilities. I imagine children being treated like lab specimens. Victoria spat. I imagine my husband tortured for his research. Ah, yes, James, so noble, so principled. Dubois' smile turned cruel. He screamed quite prettily, you know, but he never broke, never gave us what we needed. He glanced at the shredder. And now all record of those attempts will disappear, just like your daughters eventually will. Marcus stepped forward, rage building. You'll never touch those girls again. Dubois looked at him with amused contempt. The maintenance man. How noble, protecting children that aren't even truly human. They're manufactured miracles, nothing more. They're children, Marcus said, who love stuffed dragons and chocolate chip cookies and making each other laugh. That makes them more human than you'll ever be. Something dangerous flashed in Dubois' eyes. His hand moved toward his jacket. Jenny's gun was already aimed. Don't. But it wasn't a weapon he pulled out. It was a small remote control. Did you really think I wouldn't have a contingency plan? This facility is wired to destroy all evidence, including us. He pressed the button. Red lights began flashing. A computerized voice announced, "Purge sequence initiated. 5 minutes to sterilization." "The girls' medical records," Victoria gasped. "The proof of what they did will be atomized," Dubois said with satisfaction, "along with anyone in this lab. A regrettable accident during a federal raid. So tragic." But Marcus was already moving. Not toward the exit, but toward the bank of computers along the wall. After 15 years of maintaining temperamental school equipment, he knew something about systems. "What are you doing?" Jenny demanded, her gun still trained on Dubois. "Finding the override," Marcus said, fingers flying over keyboards. "Every system has a maintenance bypass, even ones designed to self-destruct." Dubois laughed. "You think a maintenance man can—" "Got it!" Marcus's voice was triumphant. The red lights stopped flashing. "System purge overridden," the computer announced. "Emergency protocols disabled." The look of shock on Dubois' face was almost comical. Almost. "You see," Marcus said quietly, "that's the thing about maintenance men. We fix things, including your perfect plan." Victoria was already accessing the computer systems, downloading files. Jenny kept her weapon steady while Commander Chen's team secured Dubois, but Marcus wasn't done. He walked up to the handcuffed man, looked him in the eye and said, "Those girls you tried to unmake, they have a family now, a big one, and we will always find them, protect them, love them. That's what real humans do." The falcon ring glinted one last time as Dubois was led away. Unlike its owner, it looked smaller now, less threatening. Just a piece of metal trying to look more important. Then it was, just like the man who wore it. The handcuffs clicked shut around Dubois' wrists with a satisfying finality. In the harsh fluorescent light of the lab, his expensive suit looked suddenly shabby, his commanding presence diminished. "Jean-Paul Dubois," Jenny read formally, "you are under arrest for the murder of Alexander Morgan, the kidnapping and torture of James Chen, the kidnapping of Catherine and Elizabeth Morgan, and conspiracy to commit human trafficking." Victoria stood at a computer terminal, surrounded by federal agents as mountains of evidence were secured. Every file, every test result, every record of what they'd done to her family, all of it preserved, despite Dubois' attempt to destroy it. "The other board members are in custody," Commander Chen reported. "We've seized computers and documents from all 5 properties the girls identified. The whole network is exposed, but it was the final piece of evidence that proved most damning. In Dubois' private office, they found a hidden safe containing a single USB drive. On it was a video recording, Alexander Morgan's last moments, as he realized what his research had become and tried to stop it. "My granddaughters are not commodities," Alexander's voice rang through the lab's speakers. "Victoria was right. I lost my way, forgot why we started this work. To save children, not exploit them. I'm shutting it down. All of it." The video showed Dubois entering the frame, the falcon ring clearly visible as he raised his hand. What happened next would be key evidence in multiple prosecutions. "You did this to yourself, old man," Dubois said on the recording. "Project Mirror is bigger than your conscience." Victoria watched with tears in her eyes as her father died trying to protect his family. "He tried to make it right," she whispered. "At the end, he tried to save them." Marcus stood beside her, offering silent support. He thought of the twins sleeping safely at Mrs. Peterson's house, of Tommy standing guard with Stanley, of how a grandfather's final act of love had set in, motion events that would eventually bring them all together. "Mrs. Morgan," a federal agent called. "We found something else in his files. It's about your husband." The documents they'd recovered included detailed records of James Chen's captivity. But more importantly, they contained proof that he'd never broken, never revealed the key to duplicating the twins' unique cellular structure. He'd protected his daughters even under torture. "Get these people out of my sight," Victoria said coldly, watching as Dubois and his conspirators were led away. Dawn was breaking outside when they finally emerged from the mansion. News vans, were already gathering, drawn by the commotion of the raid. But Victoria's security team had the situation well in hand, keeping reporters at a safe distance. "It's really over," Marcus said, watching the police vehicles pull away. "This part is..." Victoria looked exhausted but determined. "Now comes the harder part. Healing, building something new from all this wreckage. The girls need stability, family, love." She managed a small smile. "Everything you and your son have already given them." Jenny approached, looking professional. "Despite the early hour, the FBI wants to interview the twins, gently, with child psychologists present. But their testimony can wait," Victoria said firmly. "They've been through enough. Right now they need to be children, to feel safe." "They do feel safe," Marcus said quietly. "With Tommy, with Stanley. Sometimes the best way to heal is to just be normal for a while." Victoria nodded slowly. "That's why the trust documents are so important. Why I want you to be part of their lives permanently. You understand something I forgot in all my plans for justice and protection." "What's that?" "That sometimes love is more powerful than revenge. That healing comes not from defeating our enemies, but from building something stronger than what they tried to destroy." As if to prove her point, a small voice called out, "Dad!" They turned to see Tommy running toward them, the twins right behind him, all still in their pajamas. Mrs. Peterson followed more slowly, looking apologetic. "They insisted," she said. "Once they knew you were here." The twins threw themselves into their mother's arms, but they kept hold of Tommy's hands, forming a circle of connection. And when Marcus joined them, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Behind them, evidence was being catalogued, statements taken, justice set in motion. But here, in this moment, something more important was happening. A family was healing. Together, the new house keys felt heavy in Marcus's hand as he stood on the front porch of what still seemed like an impossible dream. The Victorian-style home was nothing like his old farmhouse, yet somehow it felt right. A perfect blend of elegant and welcoming, with a wraparound porch and plenty of room for children to play. "Ready?" Tommy asked, bouncing on his toes beside him. The twins stood on either side of him, their matching faces glowing with excitement. The door swung open to reveal hardwood floors, sun-filled rooms, and walls already decorated with a mixture of formal portraits and children's artwork. But it was the modifications that truly caught Marcus's eye. State-of-the-art security systems seamlessly integrated into the classic architecture, and a maintenance workshop that would put his old school office to shame. "The security feeds connect directly to both houses," Victoria explained, appearing from the kitchen. She'd swapped her designer suits for casual clothes, looking more like a mom than a billionaire. "James is setting up his home office next door. He wants to work on less controversial research, maybe focus on pediatric medicine like we originally planned." The sound of children's footsteps thundered upstairs as Tommy led the twins on an exploration of their new shared territory. They'd insisted the houses be connected by a covered walkway so they could move freely between them. One family spread across two homes. "There's something else," Victoria said softly. She led Marcus to what looked like an ordinary closet door. When she opened it, he gasped. Inside was a small workshop, but not for maintenance. This one was filled with crafting, supplies, child-size furniture, and a special shelf labeled Stanley's Adventures. "Tommy mentioned how you used to make toys back when you could afford the supplies," Victoria explained. "I thought, well, every family needs its own toy maker." Marcus touched a set of high-quality woodworking tools, remembering the joy of creating something special for his son. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help make this a home. A real one, not just a safe house." Victoria's voice held a hint of vulnerability. "The girls need that. So do I, if I'm honest." Upstairs, laughter erupted, followed by Tommy's voice. "Stanley says this is the perfect spot for our fort." "It already is a home," Marcus said simply. "The keys just make it official." Victoria smiled, then headed upstairs to supervise the fort building. Marcus stayed in the workshop a moment longer, running his hands over the tools and materials. He could already imagine the projects. A dollhouse for the twins, new adventures for Stanley, special gifts for birthdays and holidays. Not just maintenance anymore, creation, building something new, something that would last, just like their unusual, wonderful family. The family portrait session wasn't going quite as planned. The professional photographer Victoria had hired looked increasingly flustered as the twins kept switching places. Tommy couldn't stop giggling, and Stanley the dragon insisted, via Tommy's ventriloquism, on being in every shot. "Maybe we should take a break," the photographer suggested, watching Katie and Lizzie perform their third identical outfit swap of the morning. But Victoria was smiling, really smiling, as she watched the chaos unfold in the mansion's formal living room. James, still moving carefully but growing stronger each day, sat in a comfortable armchair with an amused expression. Marcus stood nearby, ready to help if needed, though his patient skills weren't much use with this particular kind of disorder. "No breaks," Victoria said softly. "This is perfect. This is exactly who we are." The final portrait captured it all. The twins in mid-giggle, their perfectly coordinated dresses slightly askew. Tommy front and center, Stanley held proudly aloft. James in his chair. One hand reached out to touch Victoria's, their matching wedding rings, back where they belonged. Marcus standing beside them, his maintenance man's posture somehow fitting perfectly in this elegant setting. And in the background, a subtle reminder of their strength. Mrs. Peterson and Jenny Martinez, who had insisted on being there for the occasion. Not a conventional family portrait, but then they weren't a conventional family. They were something better, something real. The college acceptance letter arrived on a crisp autumn evening, much like the one when Marcus had first heard those faint cries from the woods. Tommy held the envelope from MIT's biomedical engineering program with trembling hands, surrounded by his unusual family. "Open it," Katie urged, her hand clasped with Lizzie's as always. At 16, the twins had grown into poised young women, their matching lockets still gleaming at their throats. But they'd never lost that uncanny ability to move as one, to finish each other's thoughts. "Stanley wants to know too," Lizzie added, nodding to the well-loved dragon who still held a place of honor in Tommy's room, despite his owner now being 18. Tommy tore open the envelope, his face breaking into a brilliant smile that echoed his mother's. "I got in! Full scholarship!" The celebration that followed was joyful, but bittersweet. Another transition, another change. But as Marcus watched, his son being hugged by his sisters, because that's what they were, genetics and quantum entanglement aside, he knew that some things would never change. Family, after all, was the one experiment that never needed duplicating. It just needed room to grow,